Aí já dá para ver se o microfone funciona. Obrigada, Elaine. Tchau.
Network. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sound check. People are online already. This is like how we practice. Oh, that's just an excuse. Okay, I think we're online. So good morning, everyone. Welcome here to the chamber in São Paulo. This sunny and hot day in São Paulo. Heartily welcome. And welcome to those of you who are watching or will be watching later this webinar, this hybrid event. I'm Jonas Lindström, the Managing Director here at the Chamber. Happy to open this event. Over the years, many events on hard skills, artificial intelligence, and new software coming out. I think at the end of the day, it's about people. Right? I think the event today, we will listen to Romeo and David talking about soft skills, human skills. And again, that's what it's all about, right? Chamber, we are here to connect people. We work a lot with having people coming to meet, learning new things, competence development, say, and I think it makes a difference. So again, people who have come, happy to have you here. And this video will be in English. We hope to get some attention also on YouTube. I think the content, I think it's all invitation. That's why you're here. We really look forward to listening to David and Romeo. They will introduce themselves, who they are. So that's it from my part. Thank you again, and please, Romeo and David, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Martin. So, my name is David Neuroscience-backed. I'm Swedish, living in Brazil actually second time. Did it 20 years ago, and now I'm back 6 years. My background is human resource management, and I realized, looking at the banners, I actually worked for 3 of the gold members in my career. And now I do some consulting in human resource management. Oops. Thanks again with me.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Romeo Imale. I am an executive and leadership coach, cultural transformation consultant. I'm also in HR at the moment. Caveat disclaimer, I also work for the U.S. Embassy, but I'm not representing the U.S. Embassy nor the government today. So I just have to do that. I am also not an expert in Swedish culture or Brazilian culture, but I am an expert in cultural transformation. And so we can talk more about that later on. But thank you for joining us today in person and virtually now. We'll walk you through our flow today and what it means to be an individual in a leadership capacity, whatever positions you have in the companies, and how to transform a culture into a more vibrant and productive environment. We'll walk you through our flow. We just did our introductions. We'll talk about expectations and goals, your expectations for today, and our goals for you today. Guiding principles, organization transformation, small and big. David will have a call to action and a Q&A. We have a Q&A portion over here, but feel free to ask questions along the way. It's not a formal presentation as we've talked about. This is a workshop. This is an interactive event. So feel free to ask questions. We will be asking questions, and we will encourage you to talk and with each other. So that's
Good. How many of you are currently leading in an organization? And so. Good. So signing up here for today, what's your expectation when it came? What made you curious to sign up and actually physically come here today, or listening online? You know, what do you want to get out of today's session from how we marketed and how what you picked up? Was it very individual how we picked up things that we read and see?
If we can start,
Yep, please.
could I not do it?
You can do that. Yeah, please.
Hey, please say your
My name is Andrei Fernandes. I work in the transformation office area. I designed the company, so I built out this area 4 years ago together with my team. And we did this transformation inside the company, not only regarding results, but also the cultural change. But this is very hard and very difficult topic to talk about culture. And that's why I love this topic. It's more we talk, more we learn better for each individual and to how to transfer these things. So that's why Victor, when he works together with me, so he said, hey, there is this topic here today, there, and let's go. And then we are so expectations could change.
Okay.
Learn more from the experts here and have fun.
Good. Very good. Thank you. Okay. Who next? Before you sign up.
I'm Victor. I studied in Sweden. That's my relationship with Chamber for the past 6 years, perhaps 7 years. I'm still not in a leadership position, but I graduated in international management. So I've seen cultural studies. I've dealt with different cultures, and it's something that excites me. It's a challenge. Not everyone can deal with it. So I think it's really interesting to study this. And I'm always watching leaders and how they deal with this. So I'm trying to create my base. So that's my expectation. They create this sort of portfolio, skill portfolio to get ready, perhaps for leadership.
Think about it. We can all, and you all have a leadership influence, even if not formally appointed leader. But we can always take initiatives, and we always influence other people around us. And I think that for me, the core of leadership is self-insight. Okay, who's next? There's the point you sign up.
No, please. I'm also a Hartwig. I'm used to work for a company involved with Stockholm 9 years ago. Now I'm presenting a company, a Swedish company called Eastland that works with a platform for strategic planning. And it's very interesting because everything, not the strategic planning, depends on people and culture. Everything. So this is really a simple point. But anything you participate, depends on culture, people, individuals. So it's very important to spend this couple of hours focusing on this.
Thank you. You're going?
Not much. But I'm from Snabel myself, Swedish, in São Paulo, working for Pacheco São Terceira Advogados, my chamber. And I mean, it's a pretty new subject to me, so I'm here to learn. But of course, every day I work with different culture as well in our international cases, with our international clients, mostly Nordic. But also with role as well. So this part I'm pretty experienced in, but still pretty new to the subject. So okay to learn.
Good, thank you. Now go back. Well done.
Good morning, everyone. I am Lucas Marques, partner with KPH. We are a Brazilian law firm, in spite of the American name. As a founder of our firm was from Houston. We work a lot with oil and gas, international trade, shipping, and infrastructure and ports. Being here today is basically something that I've been facing the firm since I moved from Rio to Sao Paulo to start building a new team taking me up to the point that now I care much more with the success and happiness of my team than my own. And then one thing I am eager to try to pass through all in the firm is when you can connect to that point where you are happier with the collective and global well-being of the firm, of the others, than your individual. And that will also help you develop a lot, even though I think at the beginning of the career, we are all very much individually focused and trying to develop our own techniques. I don't know what triggers that. Maybe, as we were talking before, maybe it's the trust you have in your organization or in your partners will make you easy and not reluctant to try to pass on good vibes to the others and less to yourself. But as a whole, I think that the whole team will benefit from that.
Good, thank you. Anyone want to share before we take the next slide? You're fine? Good. Thank you so much. So if you summarize, Romeo.
Yeah, so I think a lot of here is connectivity, changing ideas and learning. So that's, I see that a lot here. Some working on strategy. I think we are all working on strategy. I talked later on about strategy and partners, not one over the other. And so this is actually really good. We cultural people and behaviors. So whoever said it, thank you. Dave mentioned preparing to be in a leadership position. Now's a good time because you have leadership quality whatever position you want. So a lot of that is we're hopefully we'll cover for you, and we'll revisit this towards the end, and we'll check in as well where we.
And as Romeo said before, please interrupt if you have questions or if it's a topic that you would like to deep dive in, and we try to accommodate that. This presentation.
So our goal with this workshop is it's for you all to learn how to eat better, what better looks like in your organization's for leadership. And so we hope to instill some tools, some time for reflection to think about where you are now and where you want to be later on and where you want your organization to be. Right? It's about the individuals that will carry on that organization to your next vision. And so we also have some guiding principles for you tonight. We hope that you will be respectful of each other's opinions, that you'll be engaged in this conversation, ask questions, be active. Again, this is not just us talking to you, it's we're talking with each other. And really, we're talking, but also we need to hear about what everyone's contributing to the conversation. It is a conversation. Okay. I think we covered most of that. Yeah. Previous ones. Sure. Thank you. Any questions before we move on? Anything you want to add in terms of goals and principles? Okay. Administrative thing. Bathrooms are. Feel free to just get out and go into to ask. Yeah, all because I will. Okay. So it's December. The time flew by, right? 2025. Very quick. So we're gonna do a little exercise. I invite you to join me in us to do some reflections. I have 3 questions. Hopefully there will be insightful for you. Feel free to take notes, put it in your phone, or just think it through. First question is, what's been my proudest moment, accomplishment this year? Short time. I hope that it's nice. How have I grown? Last question for you all is, who am I grateful for their support? Who's there for you this year?
Good job. I agree. For the silence. And we'll give them, will you listen online also?
When you're listening later on, pause. You have more time. So I'm not going to ask you to share your answers with us unless you want to. But my question, big question is, how did this feel going through this exercise? Even if as quick as it was, how did that feel for you?
You must have a balance between them.
A balance between them. Okay. And remind your name again?
Christine.
Thank you.
Things that we don't often reflect all these things, so it's good to.
Yeah.
Put the feet on the ground sometimes and remember these days.
Yeah.
And it's a short timeline, this 1 year, and sometimes it's, oh, I didn't even think of that.
Exactly. Exactly.
The other thing is, it's, we are, we're, roots are fine. We are.
Gonna say more?
Yeah.
They are.
For me, I have a hard time to split myself as a human being, person, father, and my professional myself. I have two answers for each question. My personal life, my professional life. What is more important, you know? Of course, every time this comes up soon. Family, you know, human values are more important, but of course I felt proud of having achieved something for the chamber too. That's my work, you know, so it makes me happy and proud. So again, I have two different channels for both of them, both questions.
Thank you for bringing that up, because as Christine mentioned, it's a balance, right? And it's not just a balance among these three questions. It's a balance within them. And some people don't like the word balance, you know, within your life. It's all integrated, right? And so when you think about accomplishments, it's not a problem to have two big accomplishments, personal and professional. They work hand in hand. In order for you to be successful in one thing, there has to be support in it. So I encourage you to think about it not as a challenge, but as part of growth. Anything else that anyone want to say?
Yes.
Yeah.
When we think about everything, first thing we think about is the professional life. And this is not only about life, it's about any other thing.
Yeah.
When we grow, we don't grow only internally in the company. We grow society, you grow for yourself, you grow for the family.
Exactly.
So reflecting, very important.
Exactly. Exactly. And think about that as your contribution to many communities, right? Your work community, your personal community, your bigger community, however that looks like. Also, think about this from a professional development in your company. the end of the year, it's time for you to do your performance discussion with your supervisors or with yourself as a supervisor, right? What does this look like? Because as we think about growth into leadership positions, is it aligned with where you want to be? And how can you align it for the next? Many professional development goals start as January 1st. Many companies, not necessarily all, in some different things. But think about that, how you want to align. Did your goal in your professional life align with your accomplishments, your growth, and who's there to support? If yes, fantastic. If not yet, I'm not saying no, not yet, how can you tune it? No, anytime you decide. Now that we have talked about the professional, individual approaches, we talk about the bigger approach, right? Your culture within the organization. How each of your goals contribute to the mission and vision of your organization. So we're going to understand first what culture is within an organization, and then we'll delve more into the individuals and then feed into how you can be a better leader wherever you are and impactful. And what is culture? What's it? That's right. Sure. I was gonna call you anyway.
Yeah, I can just add, I mean, I think that it's a lot about behavior and how you expect people to behave and how people behave with each other and then find that you create in the organization. People with how you treat each other.
Yeah, thank you. Anyone else?
I would say inside organizations, my understanding is the culture of organization is what everybody is doing when the bosses are not around. Because we don't take.
Yeah. So that's fine. We'll delve into this because there's the bigger culture of what's expected of everyone from the higher level, right, the top. And then there's the subculture of what people are doing. And do those cultures align? So culture is the personality of the organization. It's based on the assumptions, values, norms, and tangible signs of how you're operating and your behaviors, right? And so it's a combination of all that. Yeah.
Just to say, we share on the slides.
Yes.
Yeah. For sure.
And if you want us to go back to the slides, so yeah, so it's a combination of what you all said. Why is it important? Keeps all people thinking. Research shows from PwC in 2021, if you have a good culture, engagement is like 4%. If you are misaligned with what the subculture and the bigger culture expectations are, that goes down even below, right? Financial performance, 42% higher, according to Harvard Business Review in 2020. So there is a correlation between culture, engagement, and performance. A lot of times we talk about engagement, let's measure engagement, how are people doing what they're doing, but that doesn't get to the root of the, let's say, problem, the root of why they do what they do. Maybe the culture is not aligned with what their expectations are. How do we change that? we see that, so I'm a consultant for the Barrett Value Center based in England. So I do a lot of coaching and consulting as well. We've seen that a Canadian company won Best Employer of the Year, year after year. Global media company, reduction in volunteer staff, like 30%. Global technology, 30% increase in consumer satisfaction. German company there grows by their business by 90%. An Australian mining company increases their safety performance by 40%, right? And I'm going to talk quickly about this Brazilian company. Anybody know which company that is? Not on your list.
It's fashion.
You need to. You need to. They realized 2004, 2005 that their growth had stunted. Right? After 80 years of growth, they stunted. The CEO, and I say the CEO and the board members, decided they wanted to address it. How they will address it is through strategy and cultural transformation. Partnership. It's like the two rivers in the Amazon. That's how they merged. It's not just one or the other, it's a partnership, both strategy. Now we know that sometimes Peter Drucker says, I don't know if Peter Drucker is strategist, culture eats strategy for breakfast. Right? It's true. But if you have both working hand in hand, right? Culture influence strategy, strategy forms how culture should be moving forward. They doubled their revenue because they invested in a cultural assessment through the Barrett Value Center. 36 months, every 6 months they did a cultural assessment. Now, seems a little much for some people, but because they were very invested in it, they've seen the growth. They invested in space for reflection. Or on cultural workshops. What does that look like? In culture, it just means here, again, all those norms and behaviors, right? But they also have a lot of multinational. So that's why they're really invested. And so you see a lot of this growth when you have a good, strong culture. So what inspires culture? Values. When we do the assessment, the cultural assessment, we talk about the values. What are people bringing into the work? But also from the top, what are their expectations? Right? What's their motivation for running? And then what is your expectation for being a part of this? If there's a disconnect there, that there's going to be some sort of misalignment and maybe a lack of progress, turnover, you leave the company because you can't, meet their expectations, or you just don't agree with where the direction is going. And there's not much investment that's your personal feeling or experience. And that cannot be invalidated, right? That's how you experience the culture. And it should be discussed. Because that's what you see in the behaviors. If they say this is my value, is that shown in the behaviors of the top, the board and executives and all that? Are they displaying those culture and those values? And if they are too, are you displaying? If you're aligned with their values. Your values are not aligned, your behaviors are not aligned with theirs as well, then progress will not. So these two impact culture. Right. And I keep going back to values because again, it's as a coach, my basis is on leadership. It's based on values. So if you know what your motivations are, you know that this is the right organization. Or you know that if you're aligned or misaligned, you can maybe influence a little bit, at least work on it and make a decision for yourself whether or not to stay. Yeah. So, why do we measure culture? We validate the human need to be seen and heard. And I'm reading through on the slide, but it's very important to highlight for you all. So the validation, providing a holistic view of the whole system. It services the barriers holding you back. You may not know this, but when we do the assessment, you see, oh, there's a barrier that's preventing us from moving forward, from keeping people here, from the engagement, from your financial growth. Highlighting opportunities you might miss, and then you inform your succession planning and leadership development as part of strategic planning. When you do strategic planning, it's not just where do we want to be in 5, 10, 15 years? Who do we want to be included? And many times these people will leave the company, retire, who's behind them? And are they connected with the values of culture? Right. So any questions before? Yes.
Yeah, mentioned the top-down approach, right?
Yes.
Part of the culture, how can I get around it? Why not? That also happens.
It can. Yes, and it should, right? But it's driven also by they have to accept it. Because at the end of the day, they are the ones who are decision makers. And so then how do you work with them to inform what the culture is? To feel that growth together, not just one aspect on it. Did that answer?
Yeah, because what I heard once that not necessarily power means influence, right? Sometimes we are able to no power on the decision-making process.
Exactly.
Then that's why it's a question that maybe the downstairs, they don't have the confidence to judge if that will decide, but they have influence the
Exactly.
about.
Exactly, and David's going to talk more about like your own influence as an individual. But yeah, it's very true. You can have an influence no matter where you are. Who are you? All right. And so the last question I had for reflection was, who's there to support your growth and your success? It could be your direct reports, right? It doesn't have to be your boss. It could be your peers. It could be someone below you, quote unquote, right? Because they might see things and say, hey, have you thought about doing it this way? And it's a good idea that you not highlight opportunities might be missing and surface the barriers that you're holding back. You might have been controlling too much that you didn't see an opportunity for growth. And then that's why you want to hire smart people. People maybe smarter than you, are more technologically better than you in certain things, because they can highlight for you what you might be missing. One form of influence, right? All right. So how do we develop our culture? We do a cultural assessment. So the Barrett Value Center, we do a values assessment. So we assess everyone who works at that organization, and then we develop a score. And we have a whole big report about whether or not there's an alignment, dysfunction, there's balance. So if we see that your values as an employee at this level of your of the organization is not aligned with these values at the top, there's a dysfunction, right? Because you might not be performing to the highest level because you don't agree with the culture of this organization. And then we challenge you to say, hey, what are you going to do? And a lot of times when we do this assessment, it's targeting the top. It's targeting the decision makers. Because at the end of the day, they have to make a decision. We can influence from here, but they have to accept the fact that nothing's working, or that it isn't. And they have to say then, okay, I agree with that. Let's move. Any questions here? Okay. A little exercise thing. All right, so typically, all right, when we do an assessment with their values, their individual values, we ask each person to choose 10 out of over 100 values. And we only ask you one question. Choose 10 here. Very difficult for me. Very easy for all. But today, I'm only going to ask you choose one. Just one that calls to mind right now, right? You can pick as many as you want, but I'm going to ask you to choose one that, like, some people have shared. I'm not going to delve more into just pick one. Sorry, it's a little small, but that's the most I can put. I'll give you 30 seconds. If you do this on the site, they'll tell you how many you've already chosen. So if you choose more than 10, it'll stop.
Well, the first one should be ethics.
Ethics. Okay. What comes to my brain? Respect.
Teamwork.
Teamwork.
Trust.
Trust. Okay. Dialogue. Family. What else? Accountability. Fantastic. How was that for you?
One is too little.
Well, when we do this, right, we back, and then we do more of like a one-on-one with you, and out of that 10. Yeah. So those values that you chose, let me ask you this: is that aligned with your organization? Not saying you should answer this. Just keep that in your mind. Is that aligned with your organization? That particular one. Which one? I'm not saying you should say it, but you want to say it. Which one would you want your organization to keep moving or doing more of, or actually display as it's missing? I'm not going to tell you whether or not your organization is doing it or is missing it. Anyone else wants to?
I think most companies are lacking most of those.
That's your perception, right?
Yeah.
And it's a valid perception.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's one that I didn't find on the list. Blue one,
What is it?
good communication.
The communication. Dialogue?
Oh, dialogue, okay, so.
Maybe. And here's the thing. If you don't find it here, you can interpret these in many ways. It's your personal, value, how you want to interpret it. Right? So if you see a misalignment, what are you going to do? If you see an alignment, what are you going to do about it to continue that element? There's some thought there. So just going through a cycle of how to develop your culture. You conduct the assessment with us, you share that and have the dialogue, communication. Right? And that's really the top who needs to be doing that as well. You identify and align the spouse values, what's shared and actually shown, right? You identify those behaviors that connect with those values. You work with your leadership team, and you cascade that throughout your organization, however big or small your organization is. And that's your cycle, right? So Unilever did this for 36 months. And that's how they got their productive culture. Okay. So now what? And this is for this understand your core values, you align your behaviors with the values, promote the cultural initiatives, you measure and adapt. Questions?
No questions or
Yeah,
comments?
comments, yeah, please.
To promote future initiatives.
Mhm.
I just had an onboarding 2 weeks ago. And we have like 5 meetings about values and professions. No one get it. And then the CEO mentioned the values in the story, like a story about. And then like everyone was, this is the best meeting ever. So maybe for promote the cultural initiatives, something I experienced that is really valuable was to hear how the behavior is going to happen with real examples, because think simple or be respectful. What does that mean? Yes.
And that's part of the communication, right? The communication is the delivery of message. Is actually showing what the values, right? Not just saying it, showing. So keep in mind that organizations don't change. So you can change, you can influence where the organization is, but it's the people within it, and that's part of the strategy. Right? Change takes time. Doesn't happen overnight.
Sorry.
Yeah, please.
Actually, I have a question on the second bullet point, align behaviors and values. I think you probably tackle this because it's more of psychology side of it, but what if a person understands their value, but they cannot change their behavior, whether it's ego or some, psychology thing, but they understand that, they cannot change it.
Do they want to change?
I don't know, maybe that's them. But, yeah, whether if
Yeah.
they want to change, yeah.
But that's the thing, right? You can't force them to change. They have to want to change.
They'll find a way. If they,
And it's gonna be a challenge for many people to change, right? Because it's ingrained in them. So how do you evolve from it, right? Transform? Maybe it's saying a different term instead of change. Change can be a little anxiety and stressful for many people. How about we evolve, transform, we learn, we grow, right? From what was then, how do we use that to inform us where we want to be? But again, they have to want to. You can't force it on them. And as a supervisor, you need to have that conversation with them, right? Because if they're not aligned with the company, maybe then.
Being another place.
Exactly.
Maybe they're not happy either.
If I'm happy. And then, so, what is your role in culture? Well, that's you today. Joining us.
Thank you, mate. So this is a workshop. I'll take all my jacket. Work here. Please, take the time and if you want to have coffee so that we keep your mind open and active, or text what this in a move in the room. And stand up, just stand up. Just stand up and then sit up again. Get more, move your body and your heart. And even if you're online, you can do that way. Close or office for I want to feel the energy going into your heart flowing. Because that's the challenge, how long that we give attention to people. So please sit down. Grab a cup of coffee or. How many of you have studied or are using neuropsychology in your work? Wonderful. We try. Some of you have already some insights and thoughts around it. And this is a very simplified way of looking at how the brain works. But sometimes it helps that it's simplified. But then you can override this, make it real, and you can translate into actions. So if you simplify it, we have two systems in our brain. It's the sympathetic system, which basically is fight or flight system. And we simplify it in here now. That's one way of looking at how we are wired as human beings in a very simplified. And also have a big impact on leadership where we are, because we are always moving between the fear mode and what we say as heart mode. The heart mode is the parasympathetic nervous system. And what we're really wired for as human beings is about connection, collaboration, generosity, collaboration, goes into that field of what we say would be the heart mode. That's what we're actually wired for as human beings. We're a social collective by nature. But the fear mode is fact of life. It's something that should trigger, briefly. But go into that mode, it's survival, it's just very instinct. And what you want to be as a leader, you want to be more in the kind of hard mode perspective. But when you are more, when you are in kind of what's that fear mode as a leader, you're faster, the signals that be more fast, you're not as receivable. Your communication is usually quicker. You don't listen as well as you do when you're in that fear mode. And it also decreases the team safety, perception of safety. But the signal things, when you meet a person for the first time, you pick up the vibes, they're signaling something. And also leaders do that. When you walk in a room as a leader, you signal things. You're leaking, as a leader, all the time. People pick up the signals you send out.
We also help Pacheco manage to arrive and control the room. Natural leader.
No, but you have a very warm sense when you come in. You say you. But you trust the confidence. Always signaling as leaders. And it's good we should think around. And that's why to regulate ourselves as leaders is very important. And that comes in the self-insight. How much self-insight ourselves. That's a key function I've seen working with so many leaders over years and working in big organizations, and especially during transformation phase. Really comes with spots. And I think it's important to think that it's not either or. We're moving in between these stages as individuals, but we can also work with ourselves, be more in the sense of the parasympathetic nervous system, that's more in the heart mode. I'll come to some tools and some processes that we can use when we work with ourselves. Because we can always change, and I think that's a nice thing. We can always rewire. But as Romain was talking, it's about wanting to change. Let's see if we don't want to change it much. Is it new for you, or is it some new?
Reminding me of there's a graduation. I don't remember which university or who was it, but my uncle said he once said basically the speech was get in a room that's at least needed. Usually the smartest person in the room, the nicest person. Because the less smart people, they're usually driven by their instinct. Then the human instinct is to win and pursue because you have a pure pride and a high pride. And so usually the nicest person is the person that managed to, regulate these, and he doesn't have to teach you. He's very willing. So I think it was really interesting. Perhaps we could see it. That's what this is like.
Connected to intelligence, emotional intelligence.
It is. And it goes back, how much have we worked with ourselves? How much insight do we have with ourselves? And when we are triggered, how do we respond? Because we all are triggered by things happening around us. And can we keep the distance mentally ourselves? And how do we act when we get triggered as individuals? As leaders, you benefit to actively go and try to be much more in the heart mode dimension of how you interact and work with the environment. create not only like this safe community that around. So what would you say? What's the most common thing that actually keeps us from developing, holding us back to success before things we want to do? What's the main reason why we're holding ourselves back?
Comfort zone.
Okay.
Comfort
zone. Okay.
You know, to live it.
Comfort zone. Okay. One. I think that's what do you say?
Here,
Fear? Yes.
I think also we are a little bit in automatic mode sometimes because we have so much to do. It's like you have to do things, you have to keep moving, and sometimes you don't have the time just to stop and think about how you're doing. Which is very negative point.
Trying to reflect. Good. Yeah, other comments.
Survival instinct.
Surviving. Yeah. True. And one thing that is part of fear that was mentioned, and it's the sympathetic nervous system. But what most of the time hold us back as individuals and leaders is negative self-talk. How many of you have negative self-talk sometimes? I'm not. Not raising their hand or lying.
It's calling you out.
That's actually the biggest challenge for most people for growing themselves and also work with development and growth of their teams, organization, is from negative self-talk, holding us back, not stepping out and experimenting, trying new things, supporting the people around us, like the journey that you told us about in the beginning. When you come from being a specialist and going into leadership role, it's very different. Your focus shifts. I work in the academic world from time to time, and that's very interesting to see academic leaders or professors, researchers, specialists going into leadership role. It's very different from one perspective. You kind of sphere of responsibility, focus there. I worked at Karolinska University. And we did a huge restructuring there. That was an interesting journey. We changed the whole operational model. We recruited 850 leaders. We built new buildings, changed the model of operation, how we actually develop and liver care. That was a need.
In your example, you changed the organization because it changed the people right through the new brains. And linking to the first part of the presentation, you can change behavior, but probably cannot change the personality that much, right? Because people are born the way they are, genetically speaking, or they have influence, family, from friends, from school. But basically, the question is, can you really change the personality? Because if you cannot change the personality, it will be hard to change the behavior. That would be hard to change the organization.
But the interesting thing is, you can always rewire yourself if you want to. And I think it's the willingness, insight, and willingness to want to change. We can all change. We can all change our behavior. And as Romeo started talking about values, values is really nothing. It's an empty statement if you don't connect behaviors to the value. And we can all, and you can all the time start rewiring, working with yourself and change yourself if you want to. It's never too late. And I think that's the fascinating thing with neuroplasticity, capacity that we actually have as human beings. It's never too late. And we have a huge capacity to change.
Also, just add there, as David was mentioning about values. Values change throughout our lives. Because what is important to us 10 years ago may not be as important to us now. Because either we address them already. If it's still important to us, like family for me is always going to be important. It's always going to be in my top 10 that I choose, right? But is it because I'm worried about family, or because I really just care about family that it's always going to be there? And so for me, it's okay. What is my focus now? And my focus on David is developing our partnership in this next phase. And so that means looking at financials, looking at skill set, right? And so I'm not so worried about. So as they said, it can always change. Your personality can change if you want to, based on what is important to you at that. If you want to.
But sometimes we need to take the time. I was part changing the Swedish Red Cross, and it's called the membership organization. We had 50,000 volunteers, and we had like 800 staff in Sweden. And that's the process to get everyone on board of wanting to make the change. Took almost 10 years. But they hadn't changed the structure for 18 years, 8 years.
Change things.
Especially when you can't take decisions top down. But that was an extremely other organizations changed something for that. So, do you have one kind of leadership dimension that you feel that you're stuck in right now? Something that you are working on that want to change from your personal development or anything?
Personally, the motivation, that's all, because the values, to look at that list, the list, everything there is important to some extent. And it doesn't mean that it is good or bad. So,
Just to chime in there, there's no negative value. There are potentially limiting values that prevent you from growth if you don't think about how to make it work for you. There's always positive and potentially limiting, never negative.
so I think what's important is the motivation, because one company can choose more than 10, 20 of things, 30 of things to prioritize. The key point is how to, because the devil is in the details. They can choose that. How will they develop? So the motivation enters either probably make something so clear as well, sort of trying to understand better how, because we talk a lot about transformation. Sometimes you don't need to transform because we need to improve, to align. So what's the definition of transformation? Because where's the starting point? You want to go from A to B? Necessarily, A is not that.
Yeah, no, but it's relevant and it's very good. And my experience is sometimes we can select, actually, I'm not sure, but almost whatever few words for an organization. But it's the process. How do you actually work with them? How do you implement them? How does that motivate people? How does that stimulate action? That you take action, that things are happening. That's what's needed in all business organizations. Of course, some values will have a better financial output than some of us better lead.
It's like Anna was saying about storytelling and concrete examples, right? I mean, the company maybe turns a business down because of the client wasn't living up to the company's values. I mean, that is something concrete. We're losing business because we're following our values. You know, that's something that is what they told.
And I think what they exemplify with the storytelling, it's also, if you want to influence people, much stronger impact on your brain, and it sticks with you if you tell a story. You can do this, hard fact sharing will flow over. But linking it to stories, it becomes real. You can connect with it, really understand it more easily. So it is really, really powerful with storytelling as leaders. So it's something, if you want to take out of this meeting, work with storytelling. It's so impactful if you really want to influence people in their behavior and open doors for development opportunities. Storytelling is super strong. That's a tool.
This and storytelling needs really to meet the heart.
Yes.
On the mind, it's just flow. Just go and listen and.
Yeah.
This is the-
No, as I say, it goes to the heart mode. You need to be genuine. Because if you just stand there talking, if you're not genuine, people will see through you. So again, it's countable down. You interpret how you show up, what you signal as a leader. So what can you do, to be more in the heart mode? What do you do? I will share, one quick, very simple tools or ways of operating that you might know already. Because self-regulation as a manager and self-insight have a huge impact on your leadership organization. So how can you transform so that you are more often in the heart mode than in the care mode? And what a lot of research has shown actually that meditation is a very strong tool for improving your capacity of self-regulation. And also to be more impactful as a leader. I thought, before, it's good, but the more I've looked and the older I've become, I realized how strong meditation actually can be for self-development, but especially also leadership goals. When it puts you in the heart mode perspective of taking the time to meditate. How many of you are practicing meditation or mindfulness on a regular basis? What? So you have a huge opportunity here in this room. In your life. Good.
Nowadays, I'm not very specific like I used to, but when I started feeling the benefits from it, and I would tell my friends, like, "Hey, you should try meditating." They would respond, "Oh, you know, too, my mind is so." Yeah, exactly. That's why you need to meditate.
Let me tell you this at the beginning, you get reflections. That's a form of meditation. People have this idea of what meditation is, but there are different forms of it that works for me. That's one thing I was going to comment, that maybe for myself, okay, I don't stop something every kind of but normally it helps me a lot like when I'm not driving, but it's just but your mind starts talking to yourself, then you start thinking about, and then you try to disconnect when you're parking the traffic light and traffic. So instead of saying bad words to the people around, just so this helps 5 minutes, 3 minutes, something like this, and cool you down a little bit.
That's a good example.
I can completely relate to that. I mean, for me, totally put you just stay quiet, and on the next stage, like we all think it should be. But when you're swinging, or you're playing tennis, and I was just telling this to a friend of mine. I just bought an old Beetle, a Fusca. Driving a Fusca is sort of meditation on roots.
Also connecting with one of you mentioned about we're living too much in automatic mode. Yeah, so I've seen this video that like Harvey said, you need to get bored fast. So I started doing this. So when I drive to work, we recommend don't put any music. Just have quiet. Because when you're boring, your mind starts thinking about deeper things and you shouldn't try to wait. So when I do this, my mind starts trying to play music in my own mind. No, I don't want this. I think it's also good exercise that we're daily instead of just stopping to meditate. Just try to avoid external.
So what's the most valuable community that we have today in our society as human beings, in most work conditions? What's the most valuable asset that we have? Probably. No, in the work context, what's the most valuable asset that they have to manage?
Time.
Focus, time. It's attention. That's all. Attention. That's the most valuable asset. some research, I think it's exaggerated, but you know, if we look at the lifespan, many years we spend on swiping for our phones, habits. How many years would you say a lifetime? We expect. How many years? Three. Any more bits? Five. You're excited on that. More than 20. Yeah. So if you want to change and use time, reduce your non-productive time on your phones and laptops and on screens. And research shows meditation have a very good impact. You can do 4 times a week, 12 minutes each time. But you don't need to start with 5 minutes, start with 2, start with 3. But this is, as I say, small is new big. Doing small, tiny developments, behavior changes in the long run, when you keep at it, have a huge impact. But it sounds so simple, but sometimes you need to set a behavior. How do you do that? How do you set the behavior? Of taking the time for something. I'll come to that. So how many of you have heard about this tool methodology before? ABC. It's an American researcher, B.J. Fox, that's developed this methodology in the research lab over time, that's called ABC. So A stands for anchoring, B for behavior, and C for celebration. And it's about how do we also stack habits that we actually will do the meditation on a regular basis. And very simple example is, I'm past 50, even if I go to the gym, I want to maintain my upper body fat strength. So I have the habit. I agree the habit. When I've been to the bathroom, I want to be behaviorally strong. So behavior is doing push-ups. So I set the bar is 2 push-ups. But even if I will go into a meeting or I'm on my way somewhere, I won't have to do push-ups. And then you always get the positive hormones in your brain when I do it, because I do something that I promise to myself. But we're very quick sometimes in not keeping the promises that we give ourselves. So overkeep the bar low. Something that you actually can and will deliver. Then if I do 10, I'll get even more happy in my brain. But never raise the bar. And also stacking so that I have a situation when I do it. But bottom my book right now. So that's a way of building your own helpful habits. And in the long run, when you keep those habits, it have an impact. It's like this meditation. It's like running a marathon and you start training and you haven't been running for a long time. You will not start running for a day. How will you do? Take a quick walk. So it's about starting, but it's this continuity over time. It has a huge impact. And what actually will be delivering on that. I think so that's an interesting combination of both. And it's those habits or behavior that are in line with your values. If you multiply that in raise culture in a conversation. So a lot of multiplied small behaviors in line with the value creates culture. Back to what and I like when I work with change transformation in Ericsson lately. We emphasize a lot of experimentation. We try things out, especially when you work with engineers that want to have it perfect, no risk avoidance. We do experimentation because when you experiment, you can try things out. And it's fine. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be that you win all the time. You learn. And then you adopt and keep good behaviors within the organization. How long does it take to set a habit?
2 minutes. Oh, 10 minutes.
Yeah, with personality.
And on how emotionally connected you are. So the research shows that it has an impact when you work with over time. So they have misinterpreted the research actually on the actual number of days. Because you need to select things that you really enjoy doing. But if I want to get fit and select sport, I should do something I really enjoy doing. Otherwise, I will not keep on it. Right? It doesn't matter if you go 51 days. If I hate it, I will not continue doing it. So think around it. It's about emotion. You know, if you put an iPad in the hand of a small kid, yes, that. And that's emotional different. It's not a habit. It has to have it quite quickly because it's emotionally connected. So I'll take an example, storytelling example. We call it Anna, working at the big tech company. And they have challenges with the psychological safety within our team. And it was a global team, and the engineers, felt talked over and wasn't listened to. Their voices were not being heard. And she was very strongly connected to the value of inclusion. But she wasn't, thinking how can she actually create more inclusion in real terms? And because she realized when she was stressed and under pressure, she wasn't creating this kind of right environment. She had a very senior role in tech company. So what she applied on the ABC methodology, and the anchoring, when she did it was when she was opening her computer the first time in a meeting. She had behavior or adapted behavior of asking questions, the most silent person in the room. And not non-judgmental question, but a question of curiosity, of inclusion. So she started doing that. And it was pretty, first meeting, when you open the computer, you asked this question. It was interesting to see because it also had a ripple effect for her. That she realized that she started also to pause more. She started to be curious a little bit longer. She listened longer. She just follow up meetings with the quietest person in the meeting after the meeting. So it was a positive impact of just her behavior and the mentality of behaving as a leader changed by this very, very small initiative. Just asking questions to the quietest person. And it had a huge effect on the team. The rate of participation after, I think it was 60 days, increased to 40%. The psychological safety increased to 23%. And you had much more engagement by the junior engineers. Of them percentage share their learnings. So it's with quite small but consistent behavior to create a huge impact. And that impact even funneled into the whole organization. And she was recognized for being this leader of openness and asking questions of curiosity. So small changes in behavior can have a huge impact on an organization. But you need to have consistency for keeping active. And as we say, it has to be genuine. Can't be that you do it because you think you should do it. You have to be down to the ground and think what's needed. To start helping out. Any questions? Clarifications that you have?
Once I heard, I'm not sure it is correct. People those who do things, those who see people doing things, and those who did not see people doing things. Of course, to develop an organization, you should get those who don't do things to do, but if they don't see, it would be harder before they take a position, right? So, say that applying rational changes is of course important, but emotional changes how do you do this in an organization? Because we're talking about what you feel, what you like, not necessarily something logic or precise, but engineering, right?
No, I can give an example. When I worked for the Karolinska University Hospital, we made really huge shift, already changing the whole model of operating an hospital. An academic hospital. We could have big leadership meeting with key leaders. And when I stepped out of the room, I could read on the Swedish newspapers digitally what had been brought up in that room. We had a resistance. Some people have to change. And the interesting part was, it was not the change itself that they were actually resisting in real terms. It was the loss. Because they were losing maybe their previous organization, what they have built up in their career and their life. And we managed that okay-ish. I would do it very differently if I went into the same situation again. So it's not the resistance of change, it's the loss that we see that triggers resistance.
You mentioned earlier about comfort zone.
Yeah.
Right. So they feel that they want to stay there. Okay. And there's no growth. So you're not learning. You're there, you're doing everything, you're good. But when people want to see change, again, how do you reframe that inside of change? Because change can be anxiety driven, right? Transform, evolve. Right? What is our mission now? Because we've been doing this for the past 15, 20 years, right? 80 years have passed and now our growth has started. What does that mean? We can't be comfortable. We've seen data, our financials go down. Something is telling us we're not growing anymore. So then what does that look like in terms of expectation? But the leadership has to want to accept that as well, right? So if the folks from the ground says, as we talked about earlier, you want to see change, you want to see evolution and all that, the leadership has to accept that as well. Because at the end of the day, they're the decision. We here are the decision makers for ourselves. We can say, I want to stay in it. We hear it. We provide it. But it's the wanting to transform it and accept it. Not because we need to also. Maybe you do need to, but because you also want to. So tapping into the emotions, the values. Because if you're not tapping into those, we're just talking about fear. We're just talking about financial.
How do you see the impact of working remotely in all those things? Because there's a huge impact.
Yeah. It's an interesting question. I worked in Ericsson during the pandemic. At the time, we were 80,000 people working from home for almost 2 years. And we didn't lose in productivity during that time. But what I see is we were not as well developed, really, to start up new bigger projects. We're not as good at working with innovation when it comes to working remotely. And we looked at a lot of research now, what's the best setup, the way of working, and they're still experimenting with that. They want people more often now to be back in the office. But for some roles in some countries, you need to have more flexibility. But it's we need to learn even more how we can apply. But at the same time, it's so difficult to substitute this kind of physical meeting that we have here, because we're actually signaling things. Our system, my heart is sending electric signals to you within the range of 4 to 6 feet. So, and that you can't do that. And you can't overhear things, But so I think it's more where in process you are as an organization, what topics that you're working on, what works well to do remotely, and how can you combine it with what's needed physically. So it's not a static situation, I would say personally, my experience of looking at it.
With sharing the same opinion in the company there, also everybody administrative were able to hear. So the business continues. Good. Everybody was there. Some people fake it. Some people were very engaged, but this is normal. If you talk about like for Brazil, for example, was like 5,000 people remote working, you know, the 4,000 or 5,000 people work in the plant, so it's a mix. But you're right, there was no extra push, there was no new invention or being developed because there was this interaction is very important. Now, the last 2 or 3 years, we developed much more when you come back to the office, even hybrids, you know, we can develop much more, but most of the people, they get used to the home office and they work very good in the home office. You know, they have their own routine, they know how to do things, so works good. But you're right, getting people together physically, it's a good investment. For my experience.
Yeah, awesome.
I think we need to start wrapping it up. I think in another units or our real time.
For the 10 minutes.
Yeah. Okay. I'll very good. I want to share with you to stimulate you to plan some themes and hopefully that you will learn something new. That were our main vision when we came in. Want to learn something new that you will pick up. So with that question, take 1 minute and talk to the person next to you, around you. Do you have one kind of behavior that you would like to maybe test out an experiment when we leave from here today? One behavior, one experiment. And talk with the people next to you. One behavior that you would like to that for you this fine. Are you hold someone? One behavior. Right? We'll make an experiment that will help you. Yeah, behavior. Share. You have an idea? Sure. What are you working with? Or any new ideas popped up in your mind?
Was time, take time to talk, discuss, to prioritize. Just take time. That can make a difference.
Yes. Thank you. What else?
To the point.
I mentioned that I will try this kind of habits to know someone from the company that I just arrived. So maybe the same opening a laptop for the first time. Should I try to talk to someone that I met where it's
One thing I use as a manager, and to have conversations, I mean, is walking in meetings. You walk and talk. That's a very effective way, especially if you have more harder topics, challenging conversation with someone. It's easier to do that conversation when you walk. I did a lot of times.
Just to share, one habit that learning, a lot in how to do it and especially maybe doing for example, a long team meeting, 2-hour meeting. With more reflection in the end, so to share what did you learn today, then to somebody to share something like this. Or I did, this can change a lot.
No, yeah, and I was the board president of the American Student Pavilion. And I used that as a last point of all our agenda meetings. Quick feedback, what was good, what was bad, whatever. And do things differently. It's a quick check-in with everyone. It's also set some mindset leaving the room. It's not good. As well as you pick up things that you can think about for the next meeting.
I had a challenge. You don't have to share this now, but my question is, so you chose those behaviors. But here's the why. The why of those behaviors, the values, the motives. Why do you want to know something? Why do you want to know from everyone at this meeting what the feedback? Why do you want to take time? Why is it important to you? What is the motivation?
And our opportunity to keep your attention is diminishing right now. So looking at what is really impactful leadership, and there's a lot of different reasons. So it's 3 things that you should think around, and we've covered them in different perspectives. So creating psychological safety is a huge benefit of effective groups. And you influence that by listening. When you show up. And listening is easy. Seek understanding through minor process and heart ownership. And you can have kind of coach-like approach. You don't need like read, but you can have coach-like approach. Also when it comes to communication. Stay curious and a little bit longer. Because at least looking back my leadership career on and off, I was manager first time I was 29. And everyone else in my team was older than me. And I realized looking back, I was too quick in going into advice mode. Staying in curious mode a little bit longer here, because at least by looking back, I see it's so often that the team members have much better solution than I would have needed. But you need to create a safe space for them to be able to share. It needs how you communicate, how you take in things. And really take the time to listen and to ask questions. Sometimes you will not get the real answer with your first question. You need to ask a few times. And what else? That's said to be one of the best coaching questions. And what else? And what else? But sometimes we're not safe or comfortable enough in really sharing what we have or not. And what else? Very powerful coaching question. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
Or do you have anything else that you would like to add to this top 3 list when you look at impact for leadership behaviors? And we've touched on that on different dimensions now.
It's not necessary to add, but maybe follow more your instinct on your thoughts, your logic, right? I mean, your instincts or emotion. Like losing for a decision of like marrying your spouse or choosing your area, maybe it's not only rational necessary, right? It's also a lot of emotion.
We're driven very much by emotions, but we also need to keep in mind that doing this logical planning, target mind, is important, and that takes more energy. We're emotionally quite good at responding, and we are, but also for changing a behavior, you need to link the emotions, which will just stick easily all the time. Emotion can be an asset and also be a challenge.
Live in the pause. Live in the function. Because that will tell you how you want to do it. How you can respond versus react. There's a difference there. This instinctive habitual is your reaction. But when you live in the pause, you think it through, even more rational. It's not who wins, but what's the balance? And you can respond. That's what I do with my clients. It's so quiet, sometimes it's so unnerving for them. You have to be comfortable in that limit. Sometimes it's 10 minutes. Meditation.
I mean, that's also usually a receipt that you have out with the question that you have decided to trigger something in that whole process. And just one small example from a Swedish manufacturing company. They had one question when I had a team meeting on a regular basis. Started out with, what's one small thing we could fix? What's one small thing that we could fix? And just that asking a team that kind of small, tiny question is increase the safety in our organization with the production line. It increased reporting. It increased quality. Yes, one small question. But doing it consistently and letting people feel that they actually can contribute and ask and be part. It's incredibly rich. So maybe looking back at the expectations, have we been able to live up to the expectations? So from the tools and process perspective, we have talked a little about on the fear to heart mode I mentioned. Technology and small steps mentality. Small, for me, small is new big. By taking small actions, small initiative for behavior can have a huge impact over time for yourself, but also within your team or your organization. Small is new big. And we have talked about the top behavior safety, listening, right? That's the next. So what will you do when you leave this room today? What kind of behavior habits will you focus on? What will you actually take with you? Have you learned something new? But that's what our main goal today, that you know, learn something new and create some more of a curiosity. But that they actually will be able to take action, because again, you know, you can have nice values, but without action, it's just an intention. Now you can keep at it over time. Stop there.
Comments. Careless.
Yes, the frog in the heat of water, right? Every degree doesn't do it necessarily. But if you suddenly put into 50 degrees, he jumps out. And I think, regardless of the area where we work nowadays, they're all frogs in heating water. It's necessary to watch out of the pot, right? What's going on? And maybe jump it out.
There's one thing I would like to leave with you all is really that take the time to and don't think about it necessarily. Maybe at the end of each week, end of each month, and each quarter, whatever works best for you, put schedule. Put it on your calendar. Because otherwise, it's not gonna happen. And don't change it. Keep it there as much as possible. Things will happen, but keep it. And be committed to it.
And I think make it simple. I think some of you mentioned the idea when you're driving, especially in a town like São Paulo, if you are commuting, you will have time. That could actually be your time of reflection, because then you anchored habits when you're driving. And you can decide if you do it to work or from work. Depends on where are you most clear in mind, or when you benefit from it most.
That builds up the habit, the small things that you're doing. And then building up to, and this really goes with what David's mentioning, the small things become bigger. And so when it becomes bigger, write it down. What did you do? Be proud of it. I should put it like, because it becomes clear to you and visually.
Yeah, just one maybe last thought. If something goes wrong, we need to deal with frustration. So maybe you can use the same tools to deal with frustration.
It's about self-regulation very much. How do you because we will go always in between the heart mode and the fear mode, and fear mode is more frustration or more nice. How do you deal with that? What's your toolbox to develop? Because we are individual in that perspective, you need to find what tools works for you. It doesn't.
I'm gonna leave you all with a gift. Not me. If you want to hire me, great. But there's a link here for a playbook that I created for executives, and you don't have to be in an executive position to use this. Executive capacity to work. It will align with your values. So it's a workbook that you can write on. So it's a free link. Click on that and then let me know if you have any questions. If you want me to walk you through with you, happy to do this.
I would share the slides through the chamber.
Okay. Thank you. So, Renato, please, you come up. Yes, Renato, our consul in São Paulo, help me to wrap up the event. And thank you again, David. For me personally, lots of good advice and great suggestions. Reflection, I think, is a key word, right? I was thinking about social media, what it does for us too. As soon as we have 1 minute over, we open LinkedIn, instead of maybe sitting down just to reflect, what did I do well today? What should I do? So that's a big challenge. Do not turn on LinkedIn as soon as you have some free time. That's something for me to think about. Congratulations for the class. You have the context. Those of you over here watching afterwards. Can we follow up with these professors? Renato, how was the event for you?
Outstanding. It surpassed my expectations. I did all of it already, and then on the lecture year of last year, right? And I must say it was brilliant, but this time was even more brilliant. Congrats the initiative. Thanks for coming to the chamber. As a Council of Sweden, I'm always very big fan of the multicultural approach. In Sweden as a country, where we don't necessarily only for Swedish culture, but for the interaction with other cultures. And that's what I did is in Brazil, that deals in Brazil, then I went to Sweden, and then I had a Swedes came to Brazil, and this is a Fernando went to Sweden, Brunei. To sum up, I think everything we said here, I would dare to say that we need to reconnect ourselves, right? I think that's a phrase which I kept for myself, but I share here. It's necessary to use that correctly, to link to the inner side, not to the outside. It's already too much link. So also on behalf of Team Sweden, the conference here in São Paulo, thank you so much. I would say, let's give them a big applause. They deserve, right?
From Brasilia, so they're going shopping in Jardim today. More give. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Really great.
And those of you watching and haven't signed up for the Christmas party next week, December 11, we have a few more tickets. Hope to see you at the Grand Mercury Ibirapuera next Thursday night for a big Swedish Brazilian Christmas party. So see you there and thank you for watching. See you soon again.
Let's take a picture. Everybody together.
Everybody.
We want them to show